Welcome to this Q&A session for the film Eye to Eye, which is part of the 31st edition of Nordisk Panorama Film Festival. This film is nominated not only for the Best Nordic Documentary, but also has the chance to win the Audience Award. So do not forget to vote online right after the session. My name is Elin Kamlert, and I will be the host of this Q&A. And I have the great pleasure to be talking here to John Webster, who is the director of Eye to Eye. Hello, John. How are you?
Hi, Ellie. I'm very good. I'd be super happy that the film was selected. And yeah, great to have this conversation.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this beautiful film with us. My first question is, what made you interested in the restorative justice program? Or maybe what about it interested you?
Well, I suppose like the themes of loss and loss, justice, being healing from a very tragic loss. Those sort of themes that have been quite close to my heart for the longest time. And then in 2016, this restorative justice program was launched in Finland. First time that we have a program like this, where it's focused on trying to help the families of victims of violent crime. So in most cases, that means murder. And under certain circumstances, it can be beneficial for them to meet the perpetrator, the murderer, face to face. And it was fascinating to me, and I met both the organization that was making this form of therapy available, but also with many of the families, and that's how it got started. And then bit by bit, we started making the film.
Because I'm also a little curious about who initiates this process. I'm curious about the wish and need for the victims' families, but also the perpetrators to participate in the program. Can you say something about how these meetings come about and who takes the initiative? Is it the families themselves who begin to ask for it, or the organization reach out, or is it even the perpetrator sometimes?
Well, in the beginning, it was the perpetrators that wanted to reach out to the families. And it was sort of part of their way of trying to take ownership for what they've done, and to move forward through it. But already now, a lot of the initiatives can come from the family members, and when an initiative is made or a suggestion is made that they would for this meeting, the facilitators of this program, they do quite a lot of background interviews with both sides to see whether a meeting would be beneficial, and particularly that the meeting is beneficial for the families. And one of those absolutely main criteria is that the perpetrator regrets what they did and wants to ask for forgiveness. And that's one of the things then that the facilitators have to judge whether they're actually serious about it, whether they really do regret and they do want to ask for forgiveness.
Would you like to say something about how you then stepped into this process that they are in and secured your access and your participants for the film? Because I imagine that there would be hesitation to having a camera around for these type of conversations, no?
Yes, certainly. It's a very sensitive topic, and a very sensitive issue. There's several considerations. The first was, of course, like how to gain access, and so from the very beginning, from the production side and financing side, we agreed with the finances that this will be, there's a risk involved, and that a lot of the film was actually made on development money, and this from the industry side of this of that question. so that was, so that was one way. But then, I mean, it's like in all documentary filmmaking, it's a question of spending a lot of time with both sides. And then the actual meeting, it was very important for us that the filming wouldn't have an influence on the on the actual the process. So we had actually made, like, one of the steps that we took was, we got the permission from both sides, the family member and the perpetrator, that we could film it, but it wasn't a permission yet to use it. And then further along the road, when 6 months had gone from it, they could see the material and they could feel that, yes, it had been a good process for them. So then they gave the permission to start making a film from it. And then the third stage was that once we were in the final cut stage, we showed it to everybody, and then they gave the final approval. But in the actual meeting, I mean, now they meet face to face, across a table. The facilitators are there, but they try not to take part. It should be a dialogue. And so we also wanted that our presence, to minimize our presence. So we kind of built these screens on both sides, and the camera was kind of put into the screen. So even though they knew that, both sides knew that we were there, we were never in their line of sight. And in that way, we felt that way we could just be there without influencing what was going on.
Absolutely. I think that's absolutely felt in the scenes as well. It doesn't feel like it's intrusive at all. It's very intimate. I'm also curious about the interviews with the convicted perpetrators. I think they're very strong and a bit scary. How do you prepare for interviews like that, and how did you set them up?
Well, one of the first things, like when I spoke to the victims' families, was, and one of the first many of them say when thinking about coming into that situation, that why they want to meet the perpetrator is that they want to look the perpetrator in the eye and see that regret in their eyes, see their eyes when they ask for forgiveness, because in the eyes, you could see whether they actually mean it. And so the eye, that's why also the film's called Eye to Eye, and to be able to see the eye. So I felt also, us as the audience, we needed to share that experience that the family members had. We needed to look into the perpetrator's eyes. So I used an optical device called iDirect, in which in the interview, the person interviewed looks actually straight into the camera. They say they see me, but they're actually looking straight into the camera. A lot of the method too was that I knew what they'd done, but before going into the interview, I didn't look on Google. I didn't look at all the court cases or anything, because I felt it was important to hear it from them in their words. So, and it was also consideration throughout the film, was like, how much should we hear about the actual crime? How much, and of course also, like, I had to think about whether seeing that material would re-traumatize the family members. So all the time, it was a very sensitive issue in that. And I hope we've struck the right balance in how much one needs to know. For me, and the film is not about the crime. The film is about the meeting. The film is about what that crime caused in both sides and how they work to be able to continue with their life. And that meeting is, for so many, it's actually it's a very positive thing. actually, that meeting.
Of course. And you touch upon it now, but I want to ask you more about it, because you made some strong, I think, artistic choices here that I really like, in that you don't use, as you say, what we might think of as very classical visual elements from films about crimes, which is like footage from the crime scene, or news reports, and even the photos of the victims themselves are only shown at the very end of the film, which I think is very strong. Can you please talk a little about those choices and how they came about?
Yeah, sometimes it was actually like thinking about the visual. I mean, other than looking into the eyes was so important from the beginning, and also like that those moments in the meetings are so strong, and they're actually quite like visually they're fairly simple, but they are quite strong, and often it felt that what can you put with that it wouldn't seem banal, or it wouldn't seem so we did, it was a lot of thought behind like how it should look. But one thing was clear also from the beginning, like no pictures from the crime scene, or like none of that stuff, because that again puts the crime in the center. Also, no footage, like you said, no footage of the victims, because I didn't want to use them or pictures of them kind of as like, it felt like I would use them as kind of some sort of filler, to tell the story. And so indeed and again, it's in the center is the perpetrator and the families, those that were left behind. And indeed, then that we do show them at the end, but I felt that there they would have it would do them more honor if we didn't kind of use their pictures all over the place, and try to keep it as simple as possible. So I mean, of course that can be a weakness, having like a very simple, but it felt that maybe because they're so intense, even in their simplicity, the meetings, that they could be powerful in themselves. Much of the drama of the film, at least to me, is a lot in the in those meetings, in the silences. One of very early on in the editing stage, what we actually did is instead of cutting back and forth between perpetrator and family, is we actually put them both up as a split screen. So you see both sides in the moment that they happen. So that those pauses are actual pauses, that they're not constructed pauses. They're not constructed in the editing. They're really there. And I hope that lends to, it gives even more, in that you can see both people, the reactions that are produced in both as it happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, I find it very strong. Another thing that comes up only in passing, but I think it's quite interesting still, that I would like to ask, and maybe it's a little bit silly, but you let me know. But one of the interns says a bit jokingly that this method might work in Sweden, but not in Finland. Yeah. This is a joke, but do you think there's any truth to the joke that it might be harder in some cultures to be successful with a program like this?
Yeah, I think it's what he was referring to was kind of the sort of the myth that in Sweden they're always talking about their feelings, they're always talking about, and in Finland, which there is some truth to it, like especially Finnish men have a hard time expressing how they feel. So I think that's what he was referring to. And I think, I think Finns have difficulties with small talk. But actually, like in the actual meetings, once you're there and once they're there, there's like all the ideas, all the sort of inhibitions go out of the way, because of course it demands so much courage from both of course, from the family members to go into that meeting demands a huge amount of courage, but also I think, from the perpetrators to take ownership like that, and to go in and not knowing what the reaction is going to be on the other side.
Sure. So I'm thinking that I imagine that this film can have a great impact in terms of conversations around healing and forgiving, and that it could truly help families of homicide victims to see this film and talk about their loss. And these are obviously weird times and maybe the wrong times to plan for big screening events. But can you say something? Was that part of your motivation for making the film, to use the film like that? And can you see the film being a tool for that once we're hopefully up and running again with screenings?
Well, we had we managed to we had an impact campaign as part of the film. So the film premiered in Finland. It premiered at end of January, and then from March we had an impact campaign, and we just managed, and which also like a small theatrical distribution. So we did manage to do that, and so we had several. We had two main things that we tried to get done with the impact campaign. One was like the first responders, the people who come to the victims' families with the news. And in Finland, it's not done well. And for the most part, it is done well, but there like each case where it's not done well, where the families are left alone, like just told over the phone, whatever, it can actually like further the trauma. Every single family I spoke with, every single one of them remember the moment, like every small detail of when they got the news. And some was good, but a lot of them were bad. So we got a lot of police together, a lot of the first responders. We showed the film. We got family members. We got talking about it. So we got them all talking together, and also talking together how they can better organize so that when the first responders go to the families, there's a social worker or crisis worker there, somebody who can actually help them. So that was one thing. Then, of course, we've shown this in prisons, and we also hope that, and I actually know that since the film was screened here, the organization has got a lot of contacts from both family members. Family members often feel that they're alone, that there is a peer organization, and I think this helped them as well. So I think it helps a lot of people who are trying to live with the trauma, to know that there's help for them, to know that there's not alone, and also like a lot of the experiences are shared, and that helps. But yes, I mean, for us, that for those of us who haven't had that such a like that kind of traumatic loss, I think the film does discuss a lot about sorrow and the importance of being able to grieve. So that for the family members of violent crime, I mean, if I say like for those who lose someone not through violent crime, usually you're able to start grieving process after the funeral. But for those who families of violent crime, there's the police investigation, then there's the first level of court, and then it usually gets kicked up to a higher level. So it's usually 3-4 years of constantly going over every single gruesome detail. Family members, that they have to, in court, they have to prove how close they were to their daughter or son or family member, because it's part of the whole of the, the sentencing is based on that. So 3-4 years can go easily before it's over, and only then is there some sort of peace to start grieving. So a lot of people learn to live without doing that sorrow process, and if you don't do it, at some point it comes out. So I think one of the takeaways that I got from this is that, sorrow and grieving it's a good thing. It's like it's our way. It's like our way of being able to deal with traumatic loss. And we do it like in bigger and smaller cases. I mean, everybody's experienced loss in some form. It could be loss of a friendship or a partnership, or like a love, job, career. And the way we get over it, or like get over it's the wrong word, but like we're able to move forward in life is that we go through this period of grieving. And it's especially in Finland, it's like always weird if people think it's a little weird when I say, like, sorrow is good. Sorrow it's a healing. And with this film, we hope to be able to talk more about that, and also get more help for the victims' families, so that they have the ability and the peace to do that grieving.
No, I agree fully, and I think it comes forth beautifully in your film. You were very successful in achieving that, absolutely. So I'm afraid our time is already up.
Okay, great.
This was very quick. Do you have any final last comment or message that you want to send the viewer? Or
well, I mean, obviously, I don't know how it's going to work on Nordisk Panorama, but like Q&A, like if anybody wants to send more questions or ask about something, we have just send it on Facebook. We also have a website, so like feel free. Well, it's I think it's Silmasta.fi. Is it? It's in the catalog. Is it in the?
Yeah, it's probably in the catalog. It's probably in the catalog, or Google John Webster Eye to Eye, and it will appear for sure, right?
Great. So, like, just basically, any more questions and want to know more, feel free to drop me a message. So, be very happy to answer.
Amazing. Thank you so much, John, for participating.
Thanks, Elin. All right.
Thank you, the audience, for watching. Remember, there are many other interesting films to watch in Nordisk Panorama. So tell your friends, and don't forget to vote for the Audience Award. Thanks.